By 1976, the conflict in the north of Ireland had claimed over 1,500 lives. In its war against the Republican movement, the British government's focus shifted to the prisons. All those convicted after 1st of March 1976 were to be treated as criminals and held in a new prison, the H blocks.
They tried here to force the prison gear on me in the reception area. I resisted.
And he says, put uniform on. And I said, not put uniform on because I'm a political prisoner and not wearing no prison uniform.
It went without saying Republican prisoners did not view themselves as criminals, never did, and they never will.
Go over and stand against the wall and strip off and put my clothes under a brown bag, and I'd strip down my underpants. And the guy came out again and says, I said strip, get the fucking heap off. So I stripped off naked through the underpants into the bag.
You were standing in the circle in front of all these screws, forced to strip naked, and you were just all the usual snide remarks, the jeers, the jokes, all the usual rubbish coming from them.
There can be no question of political status for someone who is serving a sentence for crime. Crime is crime is crime. It is not political, it is crime.
The talk was that H3 was not the block to go to. If you could avoid H3, you'd be doing all right. I just heard them shouting H3, and I just remember, oh God, you know, that's what I didn't want.
I was trailed by the hair, kicked into the classroom. I was stripped naked. They threw me a towel. They gave me a towel. And even when I was trying to walk with a towel, they kept pulling the towel off me when they bring me down to the cell.
I can remember walking down the wing, and you feel very awkward for a start if you're walking no clothes and no shoes on, so it's a bit awkward walking anyway. But the other thing was, you know, what do you do with your hands? Do you put them over your privates as if then that feels as if you're embarrassed, you know, but at the same time you're not going to sort of march down the wing, you know, your arms out there, because that's not how you're feeling either. So I remember sort of feeling, you know, your hands were like lumps of lead just by your side somewhere, you know.
Refusing to wear the uniform, the men wrapped themselves in blankets to hide their nakedness. And so began the blanket protest. It was to become one of the most remarkable prison protests in history. This is the story of the men who lived it, what gave them hope, how they lifted their morale, and what kept their spirits alive.
In the H blocks, you were locked in a cell, and because you were a protesting prisoner, at that particular stage, at the early stage of protest, you were able to get out of your cell and go to the toilet. That was about it. If you took a visit, you were able to get out of your cell. If you went to mass, you could get out of your cell. Other than that, we were confined to our cells 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, etc. So I remember, this is me. I mean, here, this is me, this is the H blocks.
I think the first number of years you're still very much, your head's still very much on the outside. So it's a Saturday night, you're thinking about what you would have been doing on a Saturday night, or what your mates are now doing, or you'd be thinking about your family, or what was going on then, or the places you would start to go, because you're starting to hear new things and be curious about things. So now it's about also the things you would do which you never would have thought of when you're outside. So the outside world is a big occupation. The thing is, I mean, I had a place up and down the cell for about 10 hours a day, and that's a lot of time till and you're just thinking thoughts, imaginary thoughts. You're doing things about Irish and such like, but you'd end up, I suppose, holding totally imaginary conversations with different people, maybe people who are in the jail but you don't have access to, or people who are on the outside. And so it's, yeah, in many ways, you create a bit of an imaginary world in your head.
To defeat the system, they would need to be able to dictate the pace of the protest. Escalation was inevitable. Confined to their cells, the immediate enemy became the prison staff, and the authorities would seek every opportunity to undermine their spirit.
Food and tobacco were things that definitely affected the morale of a wing. The particular screw in charge of the wing, his policy was, well, there wasn't brutality, it was to generally starve us. Like, the portions were just outrageous. You know, you could literally count the number of cornflakes on the bowl. The bowls themselves were smaller than in any other block. They were like saucers. So you can be counting, somebody one morning shouted over, I think it was Sean Coleman, he had 11 cornflakes, and this was mixed with milk and water, the water down the milk. In the evening you got a cup of tea and cake, and it was just yellow cake that used to come round. That a lot of people hated, and it's funny because Kieran Dockerty, who died in hunger strike, used to be saying that anybody didn't want the yellow cake to swing it up to him, and at the time there was no windows. We'd smashed the windows and they were open, so you could, the bit of a towel that we used wasn't a towel, it was like a piece of like a white linen, but you could use it to put your arm out and swing from one cell to another, so like people would actually swung down the yellow cake down the big dock. I think it was the idea of just having something to eat rather than nothing.
We're political prisoners! We want political status! We're political prisoners! Political status! Victory the Blanketmen!
Amid a dispute over the issue of slopping out, the protest was to reach new levels as prisoners resorted to the drastic step of covering their cells in excreta. Their actions put the prison authorities on the back foot and boosted the prisoners' morale. They seemed capable of enduring even the most inhumane of living conditions.
There was different ways of just dumping it out the window. There was options of maybe leaving it lying in a pine in a corner. You had maggots and stuff like that there because in the good weather. You'd food dumped in the corner, so bread maggots, blue bottles and all that there. So we decided the only place to put it was on the wall. It meant that it dried quickly. It also meant that you had to break off a piece of your mattress. When your shit went on the wall, I mean, the most embarrassing thing for me personally was having to sit in a corner with another person, another male person, no less than 5 or 6 feet away from me. So what I did, and I just did it, I couldn't have done it any other way. When I needed to use the toilet, I brought my own mattress and sort of covered myself off and gave myself a wee bit of privacy. And I also believed that was giving the other person, because going to the toilet, it's pungent, the smell straight away, you know, so you need to get to the toilet quickly, clean yourself, and then get a piece of mattress broke off that's enough to put on without getting it all over your hands, and get that up onto the wall ASAP. People start at different places. It would start up beside where they sleep, where their head would be, so as it's done and dusted quickly, or they'd start away down at the far end beside the door. People put it on in big clumps, people spread it out, people did designs. There was loads of ingenuity around putting a piece of shit in the wall. It was hard to believe, like, and we got a bit of a laugh out of that, you know, when people told us about their artwork and stuff like that, and you sit and you pick out faces, you pick out figures. Loads of stuff like that happened, you know, and that was always a bit of crack, and, you know, and then there was always this slagging about being in the cell by a countryman. You were in real deep trouble, you know, because they were big lads and they did big number 2s and stuff like that there.
The administration responded by transferring prisoners to new wings in order to clean the dirtied cells. Once in the corridors outside their confinement, the prisoners were at their most vulnerable as a policy of brutalisation was implemented. Through beatings, mirror searches and forced washing, the strength of their will was pushed to the limit. The battle for political status was to be hard fought, with the authorities intent on breaking those who would not conform to the prison regime.
You could hear the boys getting beat, you could hear the squeeze, the kicking, the punching. I mean, the whole waiting the game again, it was a whole psychological thing too, you know. Sometimes it wasn't as bad as you were hearing, but the screws were squealing and bawling, they were banging the grills, so you couldn't see what was happening.
People are panicking. It's a free-for-all. It's you and about 15 screws, and it's you getting from that wing to the other wing in one piece, and depending what screws over the mirror, you know, it depends on the beating you're going to get.
They had a mirror. They used to set it on the ground. They used to ask you to stand over the mirror. We refused, so they'd physically here put you over the mirror. They'd have squatted you over it and pushed you down.
I know you had these screws probing at you, and see at the end of the day, to me, they were lowering themselves. I just was saying to myself, they're disgusting. They're worse than an animal. You know, they were trying to break me. I knew what they were trying to do, you know. all the Blanketmen knew what they were trying to do, so that was the focus. I mean, my attitude was to me, you're not going to bring, you can kick me over them where 24/7. It doesn't really matter to me. You're degrading yourselves, you know what I mean? What does your family think? You know, what does your son, your daughter, your mother think if they see you doing that to another human being? It's a thing, you know, that Blanketmen, you know, today, you know, would get very emotional over it. You know what I mean? I mind got over it and say to this day, you know what I mean, it still sends shivers to you. You know, hard people could do it, you know, I couldn't do it. You know, I mean, the British government, the British army screws, they were all our enemy, they're still our enemy at the time, we're still fighting a war to try and get the British out of Ireland. But at the end of the day, you know, to lower yourself that, you know, I mean, they degraded themselves.
Next time I heard the feet coming down the wing, and they passed my cell, and went to the north cell, with Joe McNulty from Tyrone, and Joe refused to leave the cell, and they piled in the cell, and they kicked them, and they trailed them up the wing, and they were booting them. I could see them outside the door, passing my door. There's that many around them, you could hardly see Joe, but they were booting and punching them, and next time I heard the feet screws coming again, past my cell again, back down back in the Joe's cell, and we got Martin Horson. Martin's in the cell with Joe, and they trailed Martin, and they bait Martin was squealing, we're baiting him. Exact same thing with Joe got. And the next thing down the wing again, and they said Loudon, he's in here. And it was my turn around, I just sat down on the floor, and they opened the door. There was about 5 or 6 of them, all gathered around the door, just ready to pounce in. They said, "Doctor," I went, "Do you want to see a doctor?" And they just div in. And the way I was sitting, they just trailed me from her from behind, right out in my face, up the wing, and they booted me in the nose and the mouth. My nose busted open, and trailed me in the big cell, and they were punching me. There was a chair sitting in the middle of the lawn. They threw on the chair and they held you down with your hands and your feet. One of them started using scissors that cut the bits of long hair off, then using shears. And I started, they were cutting me in the face and everything. They were taking lumps already, and they were all laughing, they're grabbing your hair and going, "Not that there, look, scalp, Indians, yo!" That man, scalp him. Look what I got, Loudon's hair. They had a bath on them, and the bath was freezing, ice cold water. They were holding us under the water, with our heads under the water, and you were struggling for breath, and they were laughing, they were pulling you up, and they were laughing. "Not let me can't breathe." They just run me back to the cell, opened the cell door, and threw me in. And me Hector was sitting there, and he just looked at me. I looked at Hector, and next time two was looking at each other, two just bust out laughing. "Fuck that." He was just, "Fuck that there." He said, "Thanks for it wasn't me. It'd probably be you tomorrow."
I often thought during the protest, if you were to wake up some morning and your hope had gone, then, I mean, you would realise you're living in a hellhole here. Walls covered in shit, you're barefoot, you're naked, there's no windows in it, it's cold, you're hungry. You would just despair. Most can live through that and endure it, and they have a belief that something's going to happen, because that belief it's going to happen, but they end up losing that belief, that hope. Then all of that brutality just becomes so much more intensified. I remember after wing shifts, someone saying, got up the door and saying, "There's been a bad wing shift, and a lot of people beaten up." Well, sure, there'll be bad days for these good ones.
For some, the brutality and conditions had taken their toll. As the protest wore on, numbers began to fall.
I mean, everybody's got their weaknesses, everybody's got their strengths. So you had that individual inner strength in everybody where, I mean, my attitude was I just built a ring at the fence around myself. You know, my attitude was I'm doing the blanket, I'm not going to break. Also knowing that within myself, I'm only a human being. You know, something might just trigger where I could just bang, pop, and do what they say, what they call squeaky booting, hit the bell during the night and head out, you know what I mean? Thankfully I didn't have that strength, and it wasn't only my own strength, it was the strength of all the other Blanketmen around me. You know, we all leaned on one another, although there was walls dividing us.
But then sometimes it just comes a point where someone who, I mean, some of the people who, down through the years, left the protest, who you just were amazed because you'd been there in wings with them, you maybe shared a cell with them, you knew what their attitude was, but it just comes to a point where they just, in that moment, can't take any more. And at the start, there would have been probably a fairly cruel response to it. But I think as time went on, then people realised that it could be them the next day, you know, so there was a bit more of understanding, a bit more empathy shown, you know, in later years.
Outside the prison, people mobilised in support of the prisoners. Relatives' action committees were to the fore in organising street protests to raise awareness of the prisoners' plight. Across the country, support slowly increased. But within the H blocks, in cells of 8 by 10 feet, with only a small window and a steel door which was locked 24 hours a day, the men could only rely on each other. The H block construction did, however, have one redeeming feature: sound reverberated.
You actually used to visualise movements and other things in the wing here, but with your ears, you used to hear the screws coming on here and the jingle of the keys every morning, the footsteps, and even the squeak of their boots could have been heard a mile away.
Once the screws left the wing, they left about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. And it was nearly as if the wing took on a new life, even though nobody was moving anywhere else. They were still in the exact same cells and everything, but there was more of a communal existence in, you know.
It's important to remember that in a H block wing, there was up till maybe 40 prisoners. So you can rest assured there's different people brought different things till the entertainment in those wings. There was always people whose morale was always up, and other people sometimes their morale wavered, it was up and down. That's just human nature.
Sing-songs have been organised, poetry, books, and that in itself was escapism in itself, because, you know, you could actually switch off, you know, you lie in your cell and just close your eyes and just be in a different world, you know.
Used to be groups formed within the wing, and people used to be turning around and playing the water gallon in the cell as a boron. Tom Boy Loudon here, he was actually in the cell with me at the time. Tom Boy thought he was a good boron player.
If it was half full, you get a different sound because half of it was missing, you know, and I was hurling, was beating the thing with my thumb, and the other were singing out the door. So we had a competition. One week it was called Stars in Your Eyes. Right? So what we had to do was give the fella that was doing it, at Mass and Sunday, everybody just had to hand him a name, you know, your stage name, what it was, and he would just call it that night, you know, Pixie and Dixie, which was me and Leonard. We got up and do our wee stunt. Leonard was singing, and I was beating the board on the drum, and thought we were brilliant, doing all these Dixie numbers. And he would call the other lads, you know, you had the Screaming Skull, you know, the Gruesome Twosome. These are all different names the lads picked, and when they were called, they got up and done their thing, and then we had a vote to see who was the best. Well, obviously me and Leonard didn't win it, like.
You had Jake Jackson, good at reciting poetry and stuff like that there. Martin Hurson, Lord have mercy on him, one of the hunger strikers who died. Martin's morale never wavered. He was next door to Richard, myself, and Hurson Boy, as we called him in the wing, was always up for a song, but undoubtedly he was the worst singer in the world. There was nobody could sing worse than Hurson, but when he got up for entertainment value, he was brilliant. He got the whole wing up banging the doors when he'd finished his song.
If there was a new man come on the blanket, we had a sing song, and there was one fella come on, was a mate from mine too, from the New Lodge Road, me, Paddy Burnside. So we started to sing song that night, and I was doing the camper, and I was calling all the singers, and all the lads were all singing like mad the whole night. And then maybe it came to Paddy Mo's turn, and I said, "Right, Paddy Mo, it's your turn." He said, "I can't sing a song, Tom, but I mean, you have to sing a song. I mean, this is your first night in the blanket." And I said, "All the lads is sung for you and entertained you all night, you have to sing one." He goes, "Well, I'll try one, man." And the whole wing was dead quiet. And this thing you heard, "You're once, twice, three times a lady." Right? And lads were going, "Gee, oh." He's still singing to me. I mean, "Paddy Mo." He goes, "What?" He goes, "What's the fuck's that you're singing?" He was, "3 times a lady." I said, what's 3 times a lady? He says, "number 1 in the charts, sung by Lionel Richie." Hey, mate, we haven't heard the charts in 4 years, and you're singing. But laying on the chair at the door does. Get away from that door, and the abuse he got out the door, the lads were all rasping, we call raspy, farting him out the door, like, get away from that door, Mo. And he said he sat there with a big, massive redder, he says.
I mean, while you could sing or not, you get up to the door, you talk a bit of abuse, it was a bit of slagging, but it was all part of morale building. You know what I mean? It was all part of bonding together, you know.
In '79, the moved a group of us up to H6, and Bobby was one of the ones there, and that was the first time I was in a wing with him. I mean, getting him up to do like a solo concert was brilliant, and I often thought about it. He'd be standing there. This was '79. This was one of the coldest winters that there was. And we'd be lying there up against the pipes trying to get warm and have blankets around us, whereas he's standing on a blanket at the door singing. But singing the songs that he wrote, like Sad Song for Susan and Michael Hatton and such like. I think the morale there came from seeing that this was songs that had been created in the jail and then sung by someone who was still in the jail. So it's always about overcoming the barriers that the system's trying to put up against you.
When Bobby came onto our wing, I don't think before that we'd done a book, as they called it, and say for people who had read a book, a really good book, then they would get up and they would get maybe an hour at the door and everybody would settle down. You would get yourself nice and comfortable, your feet against the pipes or whatever, get a couple of blankets around you. Some people may have pulled their mattress right up the door so as they could hear it, but seeing the quietness in the H blocks, you could hear a pin dropping.
There was times where you'd maybe walked all day, so you were sort of a bit tired, you'd lay down. Or there's times you'd have been standing, maybe the window, say, there was very little you could see out the window, but bit of sky you could sort of look up and maybe an out bright night out of stars or something shining on. I mean, you'd maybe stood there just basically staring into the sky and listening to the book and trying to put yourself into, setting yourself into the scenes where the book was. It was relaxing, so it wasn't like chill out time for Blanketmen,
I used to tell the story here for an hour and a half, and then all of a sudden he'd shut it down. Because the wing here was that quiet, he'd shut it down, and we'll get dinner here, and the colleague will fight. Is everybody asleep yet? And if I hadn't been any response, he'd have just finished the book then. And then he'd have come back here the next night and continued on. He actually used to give a wee brief rundown about what happened here the night here before, just in case anybody fell asleep here during it.
4 years into the protest, and with no resolution in sight, the prisoners decided to bring matters to a head. On 27th of October 1980, 7 prisoners refused food and began a hunger strike.
We and my 6 comrades are prepared to go through with this, and we are prepared to die to prove that we are special prisoners and our 5 basic demands are just.
Come mid-December, and with one hunger striker close to death, secret negotiations appeared to deliver the prisoners' key demands, and the strike was frantically called off. The job of briefing the apprehensive prisoners on the settlement reached fell to Bobby Sands.
I remember getting up on the pipes and seeing him coming back in, and everybody was just excited and waiting, but didn't know, we hadn't a clue, we hadn't heard anything. And I remember him coming down, he went into his cell. I think he was in with Tomboy Loudon at that particular time. I remember him getting up the door and outlining what had happened, and that he'd been round all the other blocks telling us that there's a document coming and we'll just see how it goes. And I remember just, well, that's good, let's see what happens.
There's not a Blanketman in Ireland alive that they would sort of way forget it was. We got word in there was a victory march up the Falls Road, and the dark down the other upper road, victory for the Blanketmen. At that stage we had nothing, so we were saying, well, something must happen, something must have been that victory march to the Falls Road, this march that happened. So everybody's sitting this and that there, and then as things sort of way settled down and things started to come through, and then once we were just told, bang, we were stroked. The Brits reneged in every single thing, and I mean, it was just like my guts just dropped clean out.
The British document fell far short of the prisoners' demands. In a game of brinkmanship, the British had outmanoeuvred the prisoners.
Morale here took a dip. I actually know here mine's here took a wee bit of a dip, because I actually thought here with the first hunger strike, if it failed, we had nothing else here to fall back on. I wasn't the only one here thinking that way. I would say here the majority here people probably here thought the same way.
I mean, it was one of the things here, and you had to sit back and just reflect, where do we go from here? Bobby Sands was the man that came back down and told us what was going to do. Bobby Sands came back in and sent word back through the wings again saying we're going on hunger strike.
On the 1st of March 1981, Bobby Sands embarked on hunger strike. This was to be the final chapter. Relatively unknown to the general public, Sands had been the officer commanding of the IRA prisoners during the first strike. In a short time, his name would be famous around the world. To his comrades, he was the embodiment of resistance. From the outset, he was certain of death.
That Sunday masses, everybody's over them, fucking shaking hands and wishing them all the best. And then back this cell night and he read a note, I read it. And it was all about, that he knew that this has to be done. We can't let this linger on and go on the way it's going. We have to move now. And he was, I know there's a great possibility, he says, that I'm going to die. He was, but I hope and pray, he says, that I'm the only one that dies. I hope I'm the only one that dies, he says, and it'll be brought to an end. And I don't want you to worry about me and all this, And he said, don't worry, he says, the Republic's safe with me. Out at Screw shouting, that's transport for Sands. So at that time we were using the toilets. You could shout and get out to go to the toilet. So I shouted cell 22, toilet, and Screw down at my door and let me out. Just to let me out, Bobby was coming out of his cell, the thing, and all the lads were shouting at him. All the beds all banging the door. So I went up and got a hug. Two of us hugged each other. Yes, I'll see you, mate. I said, I was thinking about you. Yes, that was it. That was the last I seen him.
In a bold move, Sands was put forward as a candidate in the Fermanagh South Tyrone by-election. The other nationalist candidates stood aside to give him a free run against the unionist candidate. For the first time, the popular support for the prisoners was to be put to the test.
During his election, we'd had a radio, a wee crystal set, which my wife Jean had smuggled in, and I'd brought it through on a visit. And it was probably one of the most uncomfortable things ever, having to smuggle something like that while there's a screw stand in front of you. She had to get it out, and then I had to get it up my ass and bring it back.
I was in the cell with a lad from a New Lodge Road, Paddy Burnside, right? And Paddy Moe he'd only limited Irish. And I here probably had a wee bit more here Irish than him at the time, right? Once the result from Bobby Sands' by-election here was coming in, if he won or lost here the election, there was to be no response whatsoever within the wing. It was actually in the afternoon, and I was pacing the floor like everyone here in the blocks. And Paddy Moe was saying, asked him here, is it through yet? And I was shouting through, a million focal here, go for it. Is there any word yet? And they were shouting back in Irish, alien focal, right? There's no word. The tension here was mounting, and we were pacing up and down the floor. And I'll never forget this. I heard the guy here getting up. I think it was PV Coyle, right? And he got up and he shouted, Kyle O'Malley. I chin here nearly hit the ground. Paddy Moe here looked at the reaction of me and he says, that's bad news, isn't it? I says, yeah, we lost. To say here what we're nearly crying here would be an understatement. We were absolutely shattered. I was demoralised because we were getting reports here on an hourly basis here previous, and people were saying with Sinn Féin tally, people had says things is going well. And there was all types of good here responses coming, etc. here, getting quoted on the news, and we were saying, here, there's a good chance of Bobby here winning this, and if he wins it, not only here will the protest maybe here come to a successful conclusion, but hopefully nobody will die on hunger strike. So we were completely racked, and we were effing and blanking here, the Sinn Féin tally people up and down the cell and all, and we were blaming them here, but they were better here than the detectives in Castlereagh, because they broke us and with their predictions. And the next thing was, there was a rap at the pipe, and I got down to it. I was completely and utterly shattered, and I was told through the pipe I actually detected here from the person's voice, but there was a change here, there was a mood change here. So I says, what's the crack? And he started shouting here, through the pipe. He says, Furo Mare, which meant, we got it. And I, just to get it, things, I reaffirmed here to me, did you not say Kailomar 5 minutes ago? We lost it, but I didn't realise at the time the verb kail actually means to lose or miss. They were actually, a person had asked them, did they get the news yet? And he says Kailomar, we missed it.
Anti-H block, Armagh, political prisoner, 30,000. Yeah! And I declare that Bobby Sands has been duly elected.
You were dancing and squealing, but now with coming out, no one eyes looking at you and I mean, not just the happiness and the joy, but you're sort of way saying, well, we're not allowed to squeal out because the Kiln Fort said don't squeal out because the screws will over radio.
There was people here starting here, letting wee yelps out of them. And then the next thing was here, everybody says F the OC. And we all here busted out here cheering and clapping and banging. And once our wing here done it, the other wing here done it. And it was like a chain reaction thing.
I really thought, I can't speak for nobody else, but just listening till the conversations after, when Bobby was elected that day, you know, the morale it just lifted right out of the H blocks. It just went out through the roof. And we says, we've got these bastards.
It was a big high for us, and I say it was a downer for the screws and the whole administration.
We thought it would save Bobby's life, the most important thing. And also that as a result of that we would get status, because if people were recognising us as political prisoners, the argument was won, it was done and dusted.
It was a vote for Bobby Sands, but it was a vote for the blanket, it was a vote for the whole Republican cause.
There was also the fear that if Bobby had have lost, then the British would have crucified us in terms of publicity and propaganda. They would have said we've been rejected. So it was a big, massive relief for us when we heard that through the radio that Bobby had been elected. We couldn't believe it. As I say, our spirits just soared, you know. We left the H blocks for a very, very short period. We were free again.
The electorate had offered resounding backing to the prisoner's stance. Bobby Sands was now a member of Parliament. Morale was at its peak.
You thought, both naively, that, I mean, it's just not that he's won the election. I mean, we should win the demands, because if you're saying that these people are criminal, and then someone stands in an election and gets elected by their people, elected with more votes than Maggie Thatcher ever got elected with, then you would have thought that the natural outcome of that there was that we would have got our demands, but we very quickly learned that that wasn't the case, and the only thing that passed was legislation to ensure that nobody else, no other prisoner could stand once Bobby died, which in a sense was saying we're going to let him die.
It comes to a stage at a certain part of the hunger strike at Bobby's stage where you knew if the Brits were going to break, they were going to break now before they let him die. But once you passed that sort of way, that line, you knew rightly Bobby was going to die. You were trying to gear yourself up for the inevitability of word coming through Bobby's dead.
Got up and shouted across one of the lads. He was fear Bobby Bass. Was Bobby's dead. The whole family was shattered. And Big Tom McAbee was 2 cells from me. And he had a big, massive roar at him, calling Thatcher a bastard and murderers and God bless you, Bobby. And just so many things came out of people just to let rip, you know.
I was at the cell with Big Joe Watson, big mate of mine from Monday Town. And the words started to filter out. You could hear it, you could start to pick up, you know, and then I mind saying that the Big Joe looked, boy, he says, aye, Bobby's dead, you know. And it was just silence, you know what I mean?
Bobby Sands died on the 66th day of his hunger strike. He was 27 years old. Almost 1/3 of his life had been spent in prison. 100,000 people attended his funeral. Nations across the world marked his death with public protests, minute silences, prayer and political outcry. Meanwhile, back in the H blocks, 3 men remained on hunger strike.
Francis Hughes was the second hunger striker, and he was going on the hunger strike a number of weeks after Bobby. And on the visit, a Chakdarak came back, which was a message smuggled from Francis Hughes to the outside, and then came back into H3 through our visits for Bobby. But Bobby was on the other side of the wing from us, so it had to pass through my cell, and I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I opened it and read it, and it was from Francis Hughes. Bobby had sent him a message saying, you know, just what this is about, and looking for to find out what Frank's commitment was. And Frank, I just remember the words from Frank Hughes' message saying, Bobby, you don't have to worry, I'm right behind you. And it was as simple as that.
By the end of May, Francis Hughes, Ray McCreesh and Patsy O'Hara had followed Bobby Sands to their deaths.
I mean, every week and past, Norboy, 10 days, Norboy was there, you know what I mean? And every death to me was as hard to get over as Bobby's death, you know what I mean? No death became any easier.
The absolute here low of my life wouldn't have been getting sentenced here to 24 years in jail. It was actually out hearing the word here, you know, about hunger strikers now, because they were here like 10 brothers to us.
Other prisoners took their place on the fast, but a successful outcome remained as far away as ever. The prisoners could only look on as their comrades faced the unbearable agony of a prolonged death.
You're slowly going that way, you're getting weaker. You can feel it every day if you try to get up and walk about or try to stand, or the first time where your sight becomes blurred. You've heard about it now, it's happening to you. Starting to smell your own body. Rotten. I remember having that and wondering what the smell was, because your sense of smell gets stronger. I suppose it's like the blanket protest. I mean, you try to say, well, yeah, this is happening to me, I'm getting weaker, this is happening. You know, you see yourself in the mirror, you see it, you can't take a warm bath. I went in the bath today and almost fainted in it, and it was like, it looked warm, but just because you're so weak. It has an impact on you trying to sit down on a chair like this here, where you can't sit on it because your hips have almost gone. But I suppose like the protest, you just then say, well, so that's the reality, so what do we need to do? So we need to put a pillow on the chair to sit on it, or we can't get up quickly from the bed, we have to get up very slowly, very gradual process, and in a sense adapt to it.
It was clear that the tactic of hunger strike was failing. Despite the loss of life, the British government refused to concede to the prisoners' demands. And still, the hunger strikers battled on. Their courage as they approached death proved a source of inner strength for the rest of the prisoners, and served to reinforce the integrity of the protest.
Whenever I just joined the hunger strike, a week into it, there was what was supposed to be a major delegation, the Irish Commission for Justice and Peace, came and met us in the hospital for about 2 days, and we were gathered there. Kieran Doherty was there, and Kevin Lynch, and everybody's there apart from the first 4 who died on it. And well, there's one person missing, who was Joe McDonnell, and the door opened and this wheelchair was wheeled in with Joe on it. If it hadn't been that I knew Joe was missing, I wouldn't have recognised the person in the wheelchair as Joe. His head was lying over to the side, his lips were all cracked, there was like saliva just dripping down his chin, like, and he was just bones. Whereas Joe was, his nickname was Fat Joe. He basically kept weight on him even during the whole protest, where people were losing it. And but when he spoke, it was very clearly Joe McDonnell knew the voice, and his whole concern was, has everybody got water? Has got people got cigarettes here? Because you could smoke in the hospital. And he then spoke to Beck, and he was saying, don't be accepting anything here, Beck, on my account. There's 5 demands or nothing here. I'll hang on in there as long as I can, but don't you be accepting anything.
Joe McDonnell spent 61 days on hunger strike. He was the 5th hunger striker to die. Martin Herson, Kevin Lynch, Kieran Doherty, Tom McElwee and Mickey Devine would also not be criminalised. In total, 10 men died on hunger strike. They carried the protest as far as it could go, and under mounting pressure from families, the strike was called off.
The hunger strikers conducted themselves with the greatest dignity. They had the respect of everyone, even people who didn't agree with us, even people who looked after them in the hospitals. They've said it in different things. Oh, it's been difficult for some of them to say it. They had the greatest respect. They carried themselves with the utmost dignity, and I think the mere fact they sat and watched comrade after comrade die in front of them, and then the pressure going on that person, whoever it would be, it must have been tremendous.
If you look at their ages, 23 years of age, Tom McAwee, and Joe McDonald's oldest. Joe was only 30. You know, Bobby's 27. Big Doc's only 25 or something. You're talking about young men here. And they found themselves in that situation, and you know, they stood up for it. They stood there and they faced it, and you could never ask anything else from them.
I mean, everybody's going to face death somewhere, I mean, along the road. But to be sitting there in the hospital and knowing that you've 24 hours to live, or you've 12 hours, 10 hours, and, you know, lapsing in there to coma zone, I mean, very, very courageous.
I think when we all went into jail, I was 19 and that was the average age. And so there's people younger, 18, 17, that was the type of age that's gone on to the protest. Because when they died 5 years later, they're 23, 24, 25. There was a lot of political naivety. A lot of that was stripped away during the protest. But I think there's still an element of it there. We believed that the Dublin government would do something major. I suppose that the Catholic Church would do something major even. So when the hunger strike began, there was still that naivety. Once it got shortly into it, I think it was stripped away. But the other naivety would have been during the protest was thinking of things, and this was a big lesson. You're trying to think outside the box and think, well, how does this look for the Brits now? Like, say, for instance, Bobby Sands has been elected, so worldwide people are saying this. Here's the people who's a politician. Ireland's its history of, you know, anti-colonial struggle, its basic demands, right to wear your own clothes. I mean, a wee bit of creativity, you could sort of, you know, still maintain the prison regime, but at the same time grant the demands, or most of them, or whatever. And we used to get into this debate about, you know, how the Brits are sort of caught in this situation, and how you could help get them out of it, you know, and you could take steps to do that, or write statements that were helpful to give them away. And then you actually realise they don't want to wait, you know, they don't feel they're caught in anything. It's what do they care? 10 people die on hunger strike, 20 people die, 30 people die on it. They're just paddies, you know, Irish paddies.
Maggie Thatcher, she always says about taking on the hunger strikers. She took on the hunger strikers in 1981, and she lost.
The hunger strike would prove to be a turning point in the overall conflict. The election of Bobby Sands had galvanised the nationalist community, and Republican electoral strength grew from there. Through 5 years of protest, the prisoners had shown that whatever the challenges, and against all the odds, the British could not break the will of one single prisoner who refused to be broken. From the H-blocks emerged a lesson in the triumph of the human spirit.
It has no limits. The H-blocks clearly showed that, where we had a group of people, a very small group of people, who lived in absolutely appalling conditions for years, and they refused to give up their principles.
The hunger strike ended with the granting of the prisoners' main demand, the right to wear their own clothes, and in subsequent years, through various forms of protest, they achieved all their outstanding demands. The policy of criminalisation had failed, defeated by a group of men known simply as Blanketmen.
Everything is possible. You know what I mean? You can't rule nothing out again. It's down to your attitude. If you believe in what you're fighting for, if you believe that you're right and you have a just cause, well then, you know what I mean? There's no boundaries there.
Everything they threw at us, we took it. Everything that they tried to do to break us, we overcame it.
You can try and brutalise them, walk all over the top of them, and the human spirit can resist that.
Thinking about those, some of it's, I mean, it's the whole story, like the David and Goliath, or the the underdog rising up against the oppressor, the slave rising up against the slave master.
That inner strength and that Bobby says, it tells you you're right, I'm right, end of story. I'm right, British are wrong, they shouldn't be here. You know, you adopt that attitude and you get in that frame of mind, well then there's nothing going to stop you.